Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. Video presentations. This is a add-on to the proton electron charge subject and the simulation, which, yeah, the other video I made was of crap quality because of some sort of crappy issue. And so anyway, I just thought I'd do a little better so you can see the force bits here. Now you can't see that they're red and blue, but you can see that they exist anyway. So just thought I would show that so you can see that it does work and such. Let's see, can I make this smaller without moving it? Probably not. Okay, now we'll make it a little bit smaller. All right, see a little bit more. There's one over there. Yeah. So I can't be certain about these rules being exact just because there's a little waviness, but that's because they're transitioning through each other and that's creating these spurts that probably shouldn't exist. But anyway, I don't want to get into all those details. The basic function is the simple three rules. This is the byproduct when you don't add any other rules about them actually colliding with each other, and the fact that that would stall their momentum, or they would keep pushing into each other, and building more and more force pushing into each other. There's lots of different variations on the theme that can be imagined. So I don't know if we need to play that anymore, but we'll play it a little bit more. So the actual viewing size is still, so you can still sort of see them, I hope. That there's force there, and that they will reliably repel red against red, blue against blue, and like I said, if it wasn't for the fact that they're overlapping, you'd see it better. The other simulation does show that. So, but anyway, this is this simulation, and so there is the GitHub page for this program, and I don't know any, it's a C program, I think, or C++ or something. I don't know enough about it to say anything. Okay, so that link is on the page linked below in the description, and it's public domain kind of stuff, and if somebody can work on it, that's fine. They have to convert one of these files into some kind of executable in Linux for me to be able to use it, so I can, if somebody's interested, email me, and I can send you that, what I know of that conversion, but that's all I can do. So anyway, just for those interested. Okay, so the other thing I have done is I have added text to the file, the page. Where the hell is it? Come on, move. Okay, could make that bigger. I'll try to make it bigger. Yeah, that worked. Almost. Probably could go bigger. Alright, there. So we'll just read through it, and it's really crude, just slopped together, blah blah blah. And so hopefully that will improve with time. And again, if somebody wants to be the literate one and write this in some sort of better form, I'd appreciate it. Yeah. All right, so anyway, the code for the simulation is on the page, and yeah. All right, so conventional physics has no theory of charge, so they just don't have a theory. They just tell us that there's attraction and repulsion, that electrons and protons behave a certain way. So no description beyond stating the effect properties of attraction and repulsion. They just say those two properties exist, and we don't know why, but they exist. They provide no theory of a physical mechanism, so there's nothing. They don't even suggest a bent geodesic. Okay, there's just nothing, a complete void of any kind of reason why Electrons repel electrons, and protons repel protons, and electrons and protons are attracted. Alright, I propose the puzzle has a simple solution, a simple set of rules applied to objects of simple function. So you have really simple mechanical parts. So we have bits of force and bits of matter, and they're really simple, and they can do very simple things. And the fact is with something very simple, you can create something that looks complex. You need only imagine force to be much as Einstein described it. So Einstein did describe it. He just didn't do it very well. He didn't draw a clear picture of it, but he did talk about light quanta and the idea that a photon would in some way either be this quanta or be made of this quanta, but he didn't really make it clear. Just bits of quanta, so energy, and energy in the form of something that likely has a mass and it has velocity, the speed of light. So it's some minute mass that has a velocity that's the speed of light, and that's what force is. And you put a few of them in frequency, in a period of frequency, then you have something that might be called a photon. It is well established that the speed of light is better stated. Now, I'm saying it's well established by reason and logic. Obviously, it's not well established by scientists, which is to me quite hilarious. But I'm just saying it's you can't evade, the simple conclusion. It is well established that the speed of light is better stated as the speed of force. All the forces travel the speed of light. So scientists, physicists concede gravity moves the speed of light, that if I destroyed the sun, it would take 8 minutes for the gravity to change on Earth, the pull of the sun to go away. All right. As gravity and magnetism have been found to impose their influence with the same speed as EM photons. All right, next. The universe is just energy pushing electrons and protons. And the word energy is, that means it's just momentum. It's just stuff with momentum that's giving its momentum, a portion of it, to the electrons and protons and causing them to move. It is proposed that the universe is full of a dense field of discrete, independent bits of force. Now, I put the word independent in because it's got to be emphasized. They're not part of a collective. They're not a group. They're not tied to each other. They're not atmospheric molecules that are forced in a container and forced to interact with each other. They're certainly not magnetically or electrically or in any way associated with each other. Their association is purely incidental. There's no forces telling the forces they have to interact. All right. That these force bits can be in two distinct orientations. So this is the part that'll screw everybody up and they won't be able to think straight and do anything. So clearly it just means there's two distinct properties. Okay. Now the property could be, almost anything. Rabbits and frogs. It just doesn't matter. It's just that they're distinctly different. One is blue and one is red, or one is positive and one is negative. One is north, one is south, one is electron force. This is the part that's clear. One has an effect that is associated with electrons. It can give electrons momentum, and the other gives protons momentum. So that would be the clearest way to say it, is there's electron force and proton force. And I can show that difference by just making one red and making one blue. All right. The bits of force travel at the speed of light when not interacting with matter. So the universe is full of this little stuff moving around the speed of light, the magnetism and the photons and all this stuff. It's all moving the speed of light, and it's all made of this force stuff. Anything that influences something is made of this force stuff that's just flying through the universe. All right, so when in free space, I put in there. So when it's traveling and it's not pushing an electron or a proton, it goes the speed of light. When it's pushing an electron or proton, it's going to be going some other speed. All right, complementing these two types of force are two types of elemental matter. So there's only two types of elemental matter. There's only electrons and protons. There's no other matter in the universe. So those are the only things in the real universe. The real universe is just empty space, the little force bits flying all over the place, and electrons and protons. Everything else is just emergent bullshit. Everything else is made of those things happening. An atom is full of the empty space. The atom is really just an electrons and protons in positions. And that's it. Okay, so everything, the only real universe is that universe. These are the only true material objects in the real universe. So they're it. Okay. There is force with the simple property of speed. Okay, so the little force bits have the interesting property of going really fast. And the matter has the simple property of having mass. It's a blob of shit to be pushed around. And that's all there is. So the force provides the speed, the matter provides the mass. All right. 3 simple function rules applied to the simple objects can explain all events the universe produces. So everything that happens in the universe happens because of these 3 rules and how electrons and protons interact with the force. Okay. 1. When an electron force bit hits an electron, so it's a blue bit going to hit a blue object, and it's not moving toward it. Okay, so that's the condition. So it's moving away or it's standing still. All right, and the force bit's heading right for it and is now going to interact with it. Okay, the force bit sticks to the electron and shares its momentum. So if it's not moving or it's moving the same direction but slower, the force bit catches up to it, hits it, and sticks to it, and gives it a little more speed. And if it had no momentum, or no velocity, then it gives it a portion of velocity. And it's all based on the mass of the electron versus the mass of the force, and you could just argue it's some sort of percentage. I don't know whether it's 10% or could be 50%, could be 1/100th of a percent, could be lots of different things. I don't know, to really test that one, you really have to figure out what's the slowest speed you can move an electron. And nobody's done that experiment. They haven't tried to turn the electricity way down and see what's the slowest speed they can make an electron jump off a surface. All right, when an electron force bit hits an electron moving toward it, so now the electron bit is, now the electron is moving towards the force is going to plow into something moving towards it. The force bit is reflected straight back, so it's like a kinetic steel ball kind of reaction, and all the energy is just going to reflect essentially. And so what's going to happen is the little force bit is going to reverse its direction, just as if 2 kinetic balls are hitting each other essentially. And the electron will release. Okay, it's not going to really release it, it's just going to shoot off the extra ball that was pushing it. So in the opposite direction, a bit of force that was pushing it. So when the electron's moving towards the force reflects, that hits, and one of the pushers leaves. So now the electron moves slower. Okay. When a proton force, okay, so I probably should put that in bold. Okay, so now the opposite color. So now it's a red force hitting the blue object, hits an electron, it passes through the electron without affecting the electron's momentum or velocity, and exits the electron as an electron force bit. So all that happens is the red one comes in and a blue one comes out the other end. And that's it. So those 3 things create attraction and repulsion exactly as Maxwell described it in Electrons and Protons. It works perfectly. Alright, so 2 configurations of force, 2 configurations of matter, 3 possible interactions. That's all you need. And you've solved the puzzle of charge. Alright, so underlying this is, these are just kind of throwaway lines where I'll get on these other subjects. Forces do not interact with forces in any detectable way. So in some sense, a force bit hits a force bit and they always will just, this one sort of continues to be going this way because of the reflection, and this one continues to go that way because of the reflection. They just change their identity. So if a blue hits a blue, it can't possibly change anything. Now, if a blue hit a red, if the force bits could hit each other, then you'd end up with a blue going this way, and the universe would change because the red would be going this way, and now the blue would be going this way, and the red would be going that way. So the universe would change. You would detect it. So the simple solution to that is the blue force is in this dimension, the red force is in this dimension. All right, they don't interact except for because of the matter. The matter allows the two separate dimensions to interact with each other. That could be the simple difference between the two, is the fact that they're in two separate dimensions. They could be identical force bits, it's just they're in two separate dimensions, and matter is what provides a conduit for those two dimensions to interact. So a blue bit could never hit a red bit, and a red bit can never hit a blue bit. They can just push matter. All right. I mean, I don't need that explanation, but I'm just saying I can provide that explanation. All right, the real universe is made of just very small objects being pushed by even smaller objects. That's all there is. All right, the elemental real universe has no complex functions. Complexity is just a consequence of density and time. So it really is Feynman's checkerboard. I mean, Feynman actually suggested it might be that the universe is this dead simple, crude thing. It's just that there's a zillion, gazillion, bazillion squares, and there's a bazillion checkers, and you could make almost anything, okay, out of that red and blue. You can make an image out of it, and you can make complexity out of it. Alright, this explanation provides a perfect consistency with the known properties of electrons and protons and eliminates any need for the contrivance of the strong force. So I didn't really go into that into the video, but you could surmise, if you were a little bit clever, that you just need to put a proton here and a proton here. Now, yes, they hate each other. It would take a very much energy to push them together. But if you put an electron between them, problem solved. You can make two protons get very close to each other if you just put an electron in between them, because all the red force will be converted to blue force. All the blue force will be converted to red force, and then the red force will go right through the blue thing and be converted back into red force, blue force. Anyway, there won't be any. None of the red can get to the red. The two protons won't be able to see each other. They can't repel from each other because they can't see each other. They can't throw red force at each other because there's a blue thing in the middle converting all of their arrows into the wrong arrow. Alright, something like that. Now, there's also other subjects that are interesting, because once you start talking about creating the deuteron, which is essentially an electron proton electron, or proton electron proton, that mechanism is, in my opinion, quite capable of gaining momentum and keeping it forever. Because of the way the structure is, none of the opposing force, it can't be dragged, so it can keep going. Once it has momentum, it can keep it, because the force it's going into becomes invisible because of the change in its color, the change in its dimension, or however you want to describe the change in its orientation from being electron force to proton force, or vice versa. Alright, so that's all so far, but something. So we're getting there, little by little, blah blah blah. And we'll keep working at it. So I guess I'll do some comments and call it a video. Alright, back. Comments. Okay, good job. Well, thank you, but, blah, blah, blah. I like this because it's constructive. It's system building. Look, there's two sides to the argument, right? First, you have to understand why their theories are weak and implausible and even silly. And then you have to understand that there's an alternative that's well established, reasonable, factual, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like evolution and religion. I think both parts are necessary. You have to tear their stuff down. You can't just build your own stuff up. Sometimes kinetic energy seems repetitive, even from a purely descriptive point of view. It's deconstruction, a pre-existing theory. This is construction, and I like it. Well, whatever. Different strokes, different folks, and all that stuff. The point is that it should be just rationally debated that you can view the universe in these two different ways, and one way, their way, okay, isn't intrinsically well evidenced and proven. It's just not. And they haven't even tried to test the other theory, is the argument. Just as they never repeated so many of their experiments, they never even bothered to test 4 pounds dropped 1 foot against 1 pound dropped 4 feet. All right. I take it that you think gravity works from the void of photons between two objects. Well, they're not technically photons, they're force bits, but photons are a specific arrangement of bits. Bits, okay, that's gravity. Bits at a frequency, that's photons. But anyway, between two objects, forcing them together due to the unequal forces. Well, I kind of explained it as clear as I could make it. I've done it over and over. I've drawn it. I've done all this stuff, but whatever. But how does this explain the difference in the force of gravity between standing on the Earth and standing on the Moon? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. They're two different planets. They have two different gravities. The strength of the gravity changes with your distance from the object. The gravitational pull of the Earth on the Moon is minuscule. So if you shot a bullet on the Moon, it would just keep going. It would leave the Moon, actually, very easily. So the Moon's gravity is less, and then on top of that, 6 times less, whatever it is, and on top of that, okay, from the Earth, the gravitational pull on the Moon, I don't know how to describe. If it's 9.8 meters per second where we are relative to the Earth, it's 9 nanometers per second for the Moon. The Moon moves like 9 nanometers towards the Earth per second. It's a tiny, tiny influence. You could say that from the horizon to the horizon in opposite directions, standing on both planets would be 180 degrees approximately there, for blocking similar amounts of photons on the person, right? And they're 360 whatever thousand miles away from each other. The gravitational influence of your personhood would be minuscule. I mean, I can't even describe how tiny it would be. I know I'm a fucktard, okay? Well, but I generally do not understand and wish to. So I don't know how I can... this is so elemental, frankly. I mean, to understand that it's just, gravity is just a force pulling you towards the center of the Earth, and on each piece of the flat surface, that's obviously perpendicular to the surface. It's a force pulling you down. Now, the fact is the gravity is going through you at this angle, and this angle, and this angle. But you can sort of understand that all of those cancel. They're not going to move you side to side. They're only going to move you down. It's just the element, whatever amount, something moving down this way has a component going down and it has a component going that way. The down component's the only one that's going to cause any gravity, and that's the difference. So yeah, the little tiny sides of the Earth are creating gravity. What's pulling you down isn't just straight up and down force. It's force from all the directions 180 degrees below you. But anyway, it's too elemental, I mean, to have to go through explaining why round wheels make cars go. If a mechanic had to waste his time explaining why the round wheel works, he's never going to get to explaining how carburetors work. But anyway, it was established in the 1930s that most cancer was caused... What the fuck is this about? By the what? Precursor of sugar and glutamine in the diet. This isn't known because for some reason mainstream. This is just bullshit. Cancer, it feeds just like anything else. It's tissue growth. It requires to be fed. It consumes calories. So yes, of course, sugar. Cancers love sugar. Not a big surprise. What the fuck is this doing in this video? How the fuck did that get in here? Alright, Superior Mind says, from the point of view of forces, photons are a similar essential elemental quanta. It is mostly empty space, so there are forces coming from below us as well, but just at a very reduced rate. Now, they're not very reduced. That's the tiny part of it, funny part of it. It's a tiny difference in the amount of force the Earth consumes. Look how big the Earth is, and it consumes a force that I could defeat with, you know, per pound, 100 watts of energy, right? Something like that. It's a tiny amount of force when you think about how easy it is to defeat, okay? Considering the size of the frickin' Earth. So the amount of energy hitting the total surface of the Earth is gigantic, and there's just a little bit of diminishment in that to create 9.8 meters of velocity, which isn't that much. Depending on how much matter is redirecting, thereby delaying them. Okay, so the more the mass, the more reduction in the radiation from the direction under us. I don't imagine you can ever completely shield all radiation from one general direction. Well, yeah, if you have it thick enough, I think that's what limits the size of suns. Suns can only get so big because the pressure they create gets too large, probably. But there would be a point where you block it all, that's all there is. There's not an infinite amount of force in the universe. Okay, Superior Mind. But if we are assuming radiation and gravity are the same thing, well, we're assuming that gravity is being caused by a radiant force. Okay, it's not just a magical geodesic. The geodesic is like a light bulb. The photons are being created by a mechanism. Gravity is being created by a mechanism. All right, the inverse square law. Again, the light bulb does the inverse square law. Your eyeball does the inverse square law. Okay, even the highest energy wavelengths of gamma can be blocked by a couple of meters of lead and concrete. Well, they're the same force, so the argument is they don't have any magic powers. Okay, you're wrong to think that the bit of force in a gamma ray is stronger than the bit of force in a microwave or a radio wave. It's not any stronger. It's again the tipping point argument. It's that you're applying the force in a shorter period of time and therefore guaranteeing that you're going to impose more momentum. If you were to blow on a little toy sailboat, a little stick with a flag on it, you blew on it, the boat would slow down. So if you puffed really quick, you can understand you could get to a much higher speed than if you went if you did those 3 puffs really quickly, you'd end up with a higher maximum speed. All right. We would then have to say that the background radiation causing gravity would have to be in orders of magnitude higher. Fuck you. Energy in every direction. That somehow this is basically undetectable. Well, I mean, how can you detect something that's balanced? It's a discrete force. How can you ever detect something if you're in a perfect balance? I'm just saying there's no way you could detect it. Our cosmic background radiation is way less energetic in practice. Could be wrong. Yes, of course you are wrong. It is a lot of... Look, the universe is dense with force. It seems kind of obvious that there's an awful lot of mass moving, so there has to be an awful lot of force pushing. In the double slit experiment, there are 2 slits. Duh. Not a single slit, like you mentioned at 1043. I didn't do any such thing, so fuck you in the ass till dead, you lying sack of shit. Alright, they fire a single photon at... So there's no single photon. It's no such thing as a single photon experiment. It's all deception and lies, okay? They put smoked glass in front of a light source. They're not creating single photons. All they're doing is creating a bunch of scatter. The photons are being broken. That means they're in pieces. So you're just sending a bunch of pieces of photons into the experiment. And of course, some of those pieces can be reclamated. But there's no single photon in the experiment. It's just a lie to say you know it to be a single photon, because you don't have a single photon creating mechanism. And observed, I mean, look, Veritasium did the experiment and found he couldn't do the experiment over 4 hours. He couldn't do it the way you're supposed to do it, which is a nice long period of time. It didn't work. He had to speed the experiment up. He had to make it happen in 5 minutes. Because the fact is, he had to put more energy into the experiment, because it didn't happen when he did it the right way. And observe that the particle behaves like a wave. Well, this bullshit again. It's not like a wave. It doesn't match water. It doesn't match anything. The math is obviously the wave centers would have to be on the surfaces. If the math is correct, then your wave centers are on the surfaces. How do you explain why there's a wave center on the surface? Okay, this discovery about how tiny unobserved photons act as waves is mind-twisting. It's nonsense is what it is. It's baby talk. It's silly. You're a silly dupe. Okay, but very repeatable in a lab setting. You can repeat it. I've done plenty of diffraction experiments, okay, interferometers, all kinds of stuff. If you want to talk about some silliness, look into quantum eraser experiments. So you're just making my point for me now. So they're going to exaggerate what that experiment is about and how that experiment is done. I just watched an Al-Kahari video where he's talking about the first electron experiment, and he concedes it's not a slit, it's a crystal. They shoot the light into a crystal, but he claims it's the slit. How is a crystal a double slit? I mean, it's just such a distortion and a lie. Okay, I see how observing the particle changes the past course. Yeah, well, I'm not even going to read that nonsense. All right. So Superior Mind says, simulations work great. When I find time, I like to try making a version with this sort of revised logic. And it'd be interesting to do a 3D version as well, as you pointed out. I think another thing it could fix is to start off with forces evenly distributed. Look, I've been very rigorous in obliging the creators of these simulations to do everything possible to ensure the evenness of the creation of the force into the universe, so to speak, to prevent any biases. And eventually directed was random before because it would be more accurate to simulate balanced interactions. Then I could use a single multiplier on them to approximate more quanta interactions than what's really happening. Well, yeah, I don't know. We want to, the whole point is just to apply the simple rules, and the simple rules get more complicated when you say, well, what happens when the electron actually does hit the proton? That's the part where you have to fiddle with it and say, well, let's try it this way and let's try it that way. Randomness of particles, I think as the bits moved around, they had to find balance, filling a void. It goes along with my concept of coherence. Your concept of something? Every bit of force provides information to the observer. Well, fuck you. Information. It's just nonsense. It's not information. It's an event, but it's not information. I accept this as coherent energy. Well, whatever. You don't. What is that crap? Who is this guy? Let's see. Rafael Gonzalez. Let's see what kind of things he's got. Fry tank. So he's raising fish. Oh dear. I mean, it's okay. I like fish tanks. But yeah, there's no physics here. So we'll try some other time and see what the hell he's talking about. Anyway. Fine. It's just, this isn't about coherence. The push force is observed. The negative positive charge. It has to find balance. So, these are just mush words. The proton was not observing its surrounding until another applied force to it, attraction. That you're not even saying anything there. That's just mush. So sorry, that's just mush. All right, then he says, I actually like this. The only thing I can add to this communication, the conversion of energy to matter. Yeah, okay, so I already read that before. That's just, who cares? I mean, and what's the point? Why? You don't need to convert energy to matter. The model works fine without converting energy into matter. So anyway, I think that's probably enough and such. So the link is below to the page. I will keep updating and trying to reformat into something I can eventually submit as a paper. Yeah, that's the idea and such. So I think I'm probably going to make I might as well, because this starts to blend into gravity, so I might as well make a gravity page also. And the push-averse page, this really is just, it's just such an obvious, it's just, obviously I can't call it obvious because none of you thought it was obvious, but it seems, I don't know what word to use for the fact that it's you can't really view it any other way than to say push is really easy to understand elementally, something banging into something, but pull? No. Yeah, no. Pulls have to be magic. Elemental pulls just end up being magic. Alright, so I'll call that enough of a video. So, till the next time and such and so forth and the whatnot.